Hi, everyone. Welcome to part three of our small video series looking at the question of announced versus unannounced masses and the fact that as a parish, we're going to be doing away with announced masses. That is, masses that are offerings that are connected specifically to a particular time or place. We're not going to accept offerings for those masses anymore. What it doesn't mean is that we can't still have mass cards or you can get an intention for what we call an unannounced mass. And it does not mean that if it's a special day for you or your family that you can't come to mass and have us pray for your loved ones. We can do that. It just means that there might be a couple of other people for whom mass is being offered and we don't want your $10. Okay, so it's actually good news. So in the first video, we talked a little bit about the historical development. How did we get to this place? Where did it come from? Last video, we looked at the theology behind the concept of the fruit of the Mass and the fact that the Mass actually is the very paschal mystery of the Lord and how it's infinite. And today I want to look at some of the pastoral concerns that have led us to make this decision. Number one, pastoral concern, it's bad theology. Bad theology. Now, there's a lot of good theology there, but this idea that I can pay $10 and own the Mass is bad theology. I can buy the Mass is bad theology, this idea that it's limited. Also, the church over the years has guarded itself against what it calls simony. Now, in order to understand simony, you need to go to the story in the Acts of the Apostles. I can't remember exactly which passage it is, but I think it's around chapter 6 or 7. I might have gotten that wrong. But there's a great story where there's a miracle that happens, and a guy called Simon the magician, Simon Magos, as he's been called in tradition, sees the Holy Spirit coming down on people and thinks it's amazing and offers to pay money, $10, to buy the ability to womp people with the Holy Spirit. And of course, he was rebuked, rightfully so. And to this day, his name, Simon, has given us the word simony, which means an attempt to buy or to sell the sacred. So, you still want to give me $10 for your Mass? No, here's the thing. We call it an offering, and it is an offering. There's nothing wrong with making an offering. In many ways, it does go to do towards good work, to support the overseas missions, to supplement a salary of a priest. I've got no problem with the concept of offering. The problem is when you link it so specifically with something that seems to be quantifiable. You've reduced what is essentially mystery to the ultimate transaction. Like, I bought the Mass. And that is terrible theology. It's terrible. So terrible theology leads to terrible practice. And terrible practice leads to people getting hurt. And that's the second reason why I think we're making this change, because people get hurt and disappointed, and it seems to be happening more and more often. Let me just tell you an initial story to bridge these two things, this move from bad theology to people getting hurt. Now, this goes back many years ago, about 26, 27 years ago, when I was in class in the seminary. I was in a canon law class, and the professor told us a story of what happened to him a while back. He was in a parish. It just so happened the parish he was in was a predominantly Italian-Canadian parish. But this could have happened anywhere, and you'll recognize the sentiment behind it. But as a priest, he was saying Mass, and it was an announced Mass. The family member who had bought the Mass was in church, and he didn't say the name in the Eucharistic prayer. And afterwards, this lady came up to him, and she was very, very upset, and she got right in his face, and she said, "I buy the Mass, and you no say the name." Now, perhaps we might not have said it like that, but the exact same things happened. But why is she upset? Because she paid for something and didn't get what she paid for. I buy the Mass, and you no say the name. Like, we've got a problem here. Um, you broke the deal. We had an arrangement. You broke it, and right away we've got a huge problem because number one, no one buys the mass. But it's one thing for us to say that in theory, when in practice, we we sell the mass. So we created this problem because we basically effectively sold masses, even though we didn't call it that. You know, say the name. Well, again, as I explained, for an announced mass to be announced, you don't have to say the name as long as it's publicized. And so this brings me to my next point about my experience that people get hurt with this because there's all kinds of expectations people have around the transactional nature of this custom. The point is, I've put out money. I've paid for something, and therefore I have a certain expectation and understanding for what it is I'm paying for. And depending on what people think they're paying for, if we don't meet that expectation, people get upset. And especially since most of the announced masses have to do with the death of loved ones, anniversaries of spouses, of children, of parents. There's a lot of emotion here, a lot of hurt. This is connected with people's grief. This is connected with something that's sacred. And when we somehow help people to experience a betrayal of trust, you haven't met my expectations, I feel betrayed, uh, that gets very messy and people get hurt all the time. They get hurt. And let me just share with you over the years a few things that have happened, and 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 this is a huge reason why I simply want to change this. Not that we're going to stop praying for people on particular anniversaries or welcoming people or offering the mass for these intentions. All I'm saying is we're not going to take your $10 for it. And you're not going to have exclusive rights to that mass. There could be several people having their names said. But here's some other things that have happened over the years and have happened very, very recently. Okay, so as a priest, some days there is a mass intention that's announced, some days it's not. And so sometimes there's been times, you're coming into mass in the morning, you've got a phone call, there's been an emergency, you're rushing in, you're getting ready for mass, you're thinking about your homily, and before you know it, you're at the Our Father and you're like, I didn't say the name. I forgot to say the name. Or you finish mass. It doesn't mean that mass wasn't offered for that intention, but you forgot to say the name. People get upset. People are like, Father, you didn't say my loved one's name, and therefore does that mean mass wasn't offered? And people can get hurt. And I've over the years had to apologize many times for that. Another thing that happens is sometimes, I mean, this is all true stories. Sometimes you mispronounce the name, or the name isn't written down properly, and there's nothing worse than having some stupid priest mispronounce your loved one's name, especially if you're grieving. It's on the 10th anniversary of someone's passing, and someone can't even say the name right. People get upset. People really get upset. I've had instances where a mass intention was written down wrongly, and so we prayed for someone who was deceased when they were still alive and well, and it caused huge panic. It caused like rumors to fly that someone had died. As that famous quote from Mark Twain, who said, rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated, because word got out that he had died and he hadn't died. That has happened a whole bunch of times, and let me tell you, that causes a lot of pain as well. When weekday masses that are connected with a particular mass intention are canceled because of sickness, illness, maybe vacation, a move of a priest, or a snowstorm, all of a sudden the expectation that a mass for an intention on that day is all of a sudden moved, or even if it's moved for a funeral, sometimes in smaller parishes you have to bump them because of funerals, people get upset, they get hurt, they feel betrayed. I bought this, you didn't deliver. It gets very, very messy and difficult. And here's a final one today, and I think related to the fact that most people don't understand the history and theology behind this practice, and they don't understand what it means to have Mass offered for someone. people again have different expectations, as if having a weekday Mass offering offered for your deceased loved one is the same as a memorial Mass or a funeral Mass. And even recently, we had instances where, we got feedback saying, I buy of the Mass, and you only say of the name. All you did is mention our departed loved one's name. You didn't speak about the person in the homily. You didn't talk about them. You didn't pray. And there's a misalignment between what people think a Mass offering is and what it is actually is. All this to be said, I'm not in any way casting any blame or aspersion over anyone who's been upset at things like this happening. In fact, I think the blame really is on us because of the lack of clarity, of expectation, of what an offering of Mass actually is all about. So those are the pastoral issues that really boil down to two things: bad theology and bad practice. And bad theology and bad practice leads to people getting hurt. And I don't think that does anyone any service. So all of that to say, summing up the historical dimension, the theological dimension, and the pastoral dimension is, we're not having announced Masses anymore. You don't have to pay your 10 bucks. Still have Mass cards. You can still have Masses offered, get a Mass card. And if you have special dates, anniversaries, where you want to have Mass offered for your loved one, we're still doing it. Just contact the parish office. Let us know. We will remember your loved one on those particular days. You might not have a monopoly on the Mass. There might be other names, but remember, the fruits of the Mass are infinite. You can never exhaust it. And so we will continue to do this, but what we're doing effectively is eliminating the sense of a transaction, because we are, as we explored a number of months ago in our preaching series, we're a covenant people. And covenants and transactions are two very, very different things. So we will let you know soon about when this change is going to take effect, but I hope this helped you in your understanding. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with as many people as you can. Thank you, and God bless.